I'm Dr. Michael Miyazaki, and when I do a root canal, sometimes I feel like I have to have an endodontic obturation prayer. What do I mean by that? Well, we've done everything we can. We've used our favorite file system. We've irrigated everything out. And before I put that last gutta percha into those canals with the sealer and I seal everything up, I'm hoping I've gotten every last cell out of that canal so that the patient's immune system can take care of the rest of the infection beyond the apex, right? So if I've got the source of the infection cleaned out, then I'm hoping that the patient's body will clear out all the rest of the infection that might be in the apical tissue and ultimately will have endodontic success. But what if I've left some bioburden behind? What if there's some tissue in the canal? I can't see down into the apical area all the way down to the bottom of that canal. What if there's some bacteria there in some of those lateral spaces? Now, that root canal may not heal, not because I didn't have the competence to do the endodont procedure adequately. It's just I couldn't see something that maybe we left behind. And the research shows that if I don't get the canals cleaned out adequately, there's a 5 times higher chance that that root canal system is not going to heal, and we're going to either have to retreat that or possibly even lose the tooth. So today, and we've been doing a lot of programs on this. Today we have the indicator. And what the indicator does is it allows us to test the canals to be sure that they're clean. And if they're clean and then we seal the canals up, the patient and myself, we can sleep better. And who doesn't want that? Now, when you start to use the indicator, you really start to think about the sources of contamination. And one is I had a conversation with another colleague of ours in Vietnam. And he was saying in Vietnam, some of the clinicians there don't always use a rubber dam. So imagine you get this canal system cleaned out and there's saliva that gets into that canal system. That's not going to be good. If we don't irrigate adequately or properly, then we may get the major pulpal tissue out of that canal, but we're not getting into those lateral spaces or into the dental mud that we've talked about so often. Or maybe we've got a rubber dam on, maybe we've got the irrigation going, but we don't activate that irrigant. So we're not totally cleaning out the canals. And we've looked at that in past programs. And then when I slide that gutta percha down into the canals, into our sealer, and finally obturate the canal system, we have to make sure that gutta percha is sterile too. And those are all things that sometimes we don't think about. If I don't have the rubber dam on, bacteria gets into the tooth system. If I don't irrigate properly, then my files just create a lot of debris. If I don't activate, I'm not really cleaning out all those lateral spaces. And if I put in a dirty gutta percha, then there's a chance that that could inoculate that canal system and we don't have adequate healing. So in this scenario, we're assuming we have adequate instrumentation, we didn't miss any canals, we don't have any root fractures, etc. So the indicator is the first and only chairside device that detects a residual contamination that's invisible. We can't see it with a microscope, we can't see it with a radiograph, but within 10 seconds, we get an adjunctive canal score that indicates to us how much of that bioburden still exists in the canals. How does the indicator work? It's measuring the ATP levels within the canal. Now, why ATP? Because adenosine triphosphate is basically the energy source for any living cell. So if you've got a bacteria cell or living tissue cells, the ATP is the universal energy currency of life. So if we have life in living cells, we have ATP. So ATP is a marker of metabolic activity, not just tissue. And if we detect ATP, we know we have either viable bacteria, active biofilm, or maybe some inflammatory exudate. Now, if we have dead pulp, we don't have ATP because there's not energy. But if we have dead pulpal tissue in a canal, we're probably going to have other cells or exudate. So that ATP is an indicator because in all living tissue. And if the ATP is absent, the cell's either dead or dormant to an extreme level, or it's not a living organism. It's like a virus that has to find a host to support it. So with ATP detection, we can't differentiate where that ATP is coming from, whether it be from bacteria or host cells, but it is an indicator of living biologic burden. So even if it's a host cell, like we've left some pulpal tissue behind, we know that over time that can cause an infection of that pulpal tissue. So it doesn't matter if that ATP is from bacteria or from the host cells, we need to clean it all out. So a case where it's a necrotic canal, as we talked about, you're going to have this mix of biologic tissue organisms, and so you will still detect ATP. A necrotic canal may be ATP free in the pulpal tissue proper, but it's still going to have ATP because there's bacteria in that and the host inflammatory response. So even if it's a necrotic pulp, we will still measure levels of ATP. So what our goal is to eliminate all the ATP producing bacteria and the ATP driven inflammatory signaling. Successful endodontics will occur when the ATP activity in the canal drops close to zero. And that is after our chemomechanical debridement and successful obturation has cleaned that canal out and sealed it up so that bacteria can no longer go up and down that canal. Now, I got this great text. One of our endodontic KOLs, Dr. Rico Short, he got a reading of 1. So what I do is I challenge you all to try to get an endocator score of 1. That's basically means you have everything cleaned out of that canal. And I know Dr. Short and Dr. Gilbert has shared with me that he had a score of 1 also. So I think that is what we should strive for the lowest score possible. Now with the indicator, we want to try to have a score of 25 or less. And that just goes to show you how a score of 1 is so remarkable. Now, if we've followed our protocol and we're still getting ATP levels are still elevated, what are some of the reasons why that could occur? Well, if we've instrumented too far and blood's getting up from the apical layer of that tooth, getting up into the canal, the blood's going to have high levels of ATP. If we miss a canal, let's say we've cleaned out 3 canals, but there's actually 4, that 4th canal is going to be filled with cells. So when we take a test of that root canal system, we're going to have high levels of ATP. So if we have high levels of ATP, we need to get in there. We have to instrument properly, clean all that tissue out, and irrigate with activation. So one of the questions is, how accurate is the indicator? And under laboratory conditions, the chairside APT testing can detect the presence of as few as 10 bacteria. In a root canal setting, our test can detect ATP well before the presence of a single culturable bacteria. The indicator detects the ATP from cultural bacteria, uncultural bacteria, nerve tissue, blood, saliva, and apical fluids. So it's a much more complete evaluation tool of the root canal cleanliness than simple bacterial culturing. So when we talk about the specificity of it, because it isn't just specific to bacteria, but all living tissue and tissue in general, that's actually what makes it more accurate in assessing how well we've actually cleaned out that root canal system. So just to review, the ATP could be from bacteria, nerve, tissue, blood, or saliva. A score of 0 to 25 means that root canal system is clean. It has very low levels of ATP, So when I obturate it, there's a good chance that that system is going to heal up just fine. If we have scores higher than 51, that means that there's still high levels of ATP, which means there could still be tissue because there's a lot of cellular debris in that canal system. And it's really up to you. Are you ready to obturate, or do you feel like you have to go back, maybe re-instrument the canals and irrigate it a little bit more to bring those ATP levels down? If we can't get low scores, then what I'd recommend is evaluate your endodontic protocols, your file systems, your irrigation, your activation, because it could be something about the technique. And that's what's so valuable about this, is that when you get the scores, your endocator score, it's you that knows how well you're doing. And it could be the file system, it could be lack of an apex locator that we're not getting all the way down, or maybe we're going too far and it's causing bleeding at the apical region of that root canal system. It could be inadequate irrigation. It could be the lack of activation of the irrigant. And it could even be as simple as, hey, we didn't have a rubber dam on, so the saliva and the cells and the bacteria in the saliva kept re-inoculating that canal system. So what I would ask you, and this is something I even ask myself when I do a root canal, the question I ask is ignorance bliss? If I don't know if I've got that canal system totally cleaned out, that could mean that that patient is going to have more post-op discomfort. If I don't know if I've got all the bacteria out before I obturate it, that could mean that that tooth is going to fail to heal after the endodontic treatment. If I don't know if I've gotten all the bacteria out, it could mean that if that root canal system does not heal, then I may have to either retreat that root canal or we may lose a tooth. So the question I'd leave you with is, if you could do this test in just a mere 10 seconds, and that could make all the difference of that patient being comfortable this evening and that root canal procedure actually succeeding, would that not make your life and the life of your patients better? If you feel like the indicator could work well for you, check it out. I think it's going to change the way that we do endodontics. I've had the indicator now, and when I don't have the indicator to actually check the cleanliness of the canals before I obturate, then it's time to go back to that prayer. I just hope that this tooth heals up. I hope that my protocol got everything cleaned out. When we follow that same protocol and I can test and be sure that I have low levels of ATP in the canal, I can sleep so much better. So what I would encourage you to do is consider this. As we're coming up to the end of the year, is ignorance bliss, or does that create more stress in your life? And if you think it's going to create more stress, because it does, check out the indicator. Thank you very much, and I'll see you during the next episode. Take care. Well, I hope you liked this information, and if you did, hit the like button, and to make sure you don't miss any other information coming down, hit the subscribe button. We'd really appreciate that.